Good day, ma'am. So, the given topic to us is about Chapter 4, Section 3, Condonation or Remission of Debt. Article 1 to 70 states in its first paragraph, condonation or remission is essentially gratuitous and requires the acceptance by the obligor. It may be made expressly or impliedly. In its second paragraph, one and the other kind shall be subject to the rules which govern inefficacious donations. Express condonation shall furthermore comply with the forms of donation. So to understand more of the Article 1 to 70, let's define what is condonation or remission. As a mode of extinguishing an obligation, condonation or remission of debt is defined as an act of liberality by which, without receiving any equivalent, the creditor renounces the enforcement of the obligation, which is extinguished in its entirety or in that part or aspect of the same to which the remission refers. In short, the creditor no longer requires or demands the performance of the obligation of the debtor. It is an essential characteristic of remission that it be gratuitous, that there is no equivalent received for the benefit given. Once such equivalent exists, the nature of the act changes. It may become dation in payment when the creditor receives a thing different from the stipulated, or novation when the object or principal condition of the obligation should be changed, or compromise when the matter renounced is in litigation or dispute and in exchange of some concession which the creditor receives. Requisites of condonation or remission. So requisites, it's like this is the elements in condonation or remission, or essential for condonation or remission. First, it must be gratuitous, or it is free. There is no equivalent received for the benefit given. It must be accepted by the obligor or debtor. It is stated in Article 1 to 70, condonation or remission is essentially gratuitous and requires the acceptance of the obligor. The obligation must be demandable, and the parties must have capacity. So, they must have capacity. They must give something that they possess, because if they give something that they don't possess, it is way out of their capacity to give. And condonation must not be inefficacious. And lastly, condonation must comply with the forms of donation if it is an express condonation. Inefficacious donation. Article 750, the donation may be comprehend all the present property of the donor or part thereof, provided he reserves in full ownership or in usufruct sufficient means for the support of himself and of all relatives who, at the time of the acceptance of the donation, are by law entitled to be supported by the donor. Without such reservation, the donation shall be reduced on petition of any person affected. In Article 752, the provision of Article 750 notwithstanding, no person may give or receive by way of donation more than he may give or receive by will. The donation shall be inefficacious in all that it may exceed this limitation. Forms of donation. So, forms of donation must be observed. If the condonation involves immovable, apply Article 748. If the condonation involves an immovable, apply Article 749. So, Article 748, donation of a movable may be made orally or in writing. An oral donation requires the simultaneous delivery of a thing or the document representing the right donated. If the value of the personal property donated exceeds 5,000 pesos, the donation and the acceptance shall be made in writing. Otherwise, the donation shall be void. So if it is not if it exceeds 5,000 pesos and it is not made in writing, it will be void. So it must be made in writing if it exceeds 5,000 pesos. Article 749. In order that the donation of an immovable may be valid, it must be made in public document, specifying therein the property donated and the value of the charges which the donee must satisfy. The acceptance may be made in the same deed of donation or in a separate public document, but it shall not take effect unless it is done during the lifetime of the donor. In third paragraph, if the acceptance is made in a separate instrument, donor shall be modified thereof in an authentic form, and this step shall be donated in both instruments. There are kinds of remission or condition. As to form, there is express and implied. Express, when it is made in accordance with the formalities prescribed by law for donations. Implied, when, although it is not made in accordance with the formalities prescribed by law for donation, it can be deduced from the acts of the obligor, obligee or creditor. As to extent, these two, total and partial. For total, it is total when the entire obligation is extinguished. For example, D obliges himself to deliver 10 pesos to C. If C will condone the 10 pesos, which means that he no longer collect the 10,000 pesos to D, then the condonation or remission is total because it covers the entire obligation, which is the 10,000 pesos. For partial, it is partial when it refers only to the principal or to the accessory obligation or to an aspect thereof which affects the debtor, as for instance solidarity. So, in the same situation in total, but C condoned only 5,000, which means he will still collect the half of the obligation because he only condoned 5,000 pesos, so it is partial. As to constitution, there is inter vivos and mortis causa. Inter vivos, it refers to that which is constituted by agreement of the obligee and the obligor, in which case it partakes of the nature of a donation inter vivos. Hence, it will take effect during the lifetime of the donor. For example, D obliges himself to deliver 10,000 to C. When C is still alive, he told D that he will no longer collect the 10,000 peso. So, the date of effectivity of condonation and remission is inter vivos because it is during the lifetime of the donor. So, mortis causa, it refers to which is constituted by last will and testament, in which it partakes of the nature of the donation mortis causa. Hence, it will take effect upon the death of the donor. The mortis causa is just the opposite of the inter vivos, because inter vivos, it is during the lifetime of the donor. In mortis causa, it will take effect upon the death of the donor. So to understand it more, let's put it into a problem. On May 10, 1979, the parties in this case entered into a loan agreement with assumption of solidarity liability whereby H and W were given a loan of 500,000 pesos by X Investment Corporation. H and W subsequently obtained a second loan of 300,000 pesos evidenced by two promissory notes. By April 2, 1985, H and W had paid their first loan of 500,000 pesos. On November 4, 1985, X Investment Corporation was replaced under receivership by the Central Bank, and B and C were appointed as receiver and in-house examiner respectively. On May 7, 1986, H and W made a partial payment of 50,000 pesos on the second loan. They later wrote X Investment Corporation a letter dated June 18, 1986, proposing to settle their obligation. On July 2, 1986, X Investment Corporation, through its counsel, replied with a counter offer, namely that it would reduce the penalty charges up to 140,000 pesos, provided H and W can pay their obligation on or before July 30, 1986. As of July 31, 1986, H and W's total liability to X Investment Corporation was 727,001 pesos. In this date, H and W paid 410,854 pesos by means of a check, receipt of which was acknowledged by C. The corresponding voucher for the check bears with the following notation: full payment of loan. The amount of 410,854 pesos was the sum of the principal 295,469 pesos and the interest 165,385 pesos, less than the partial payment of 50,000. Subsequently, X Investment Corporation sent two demand letters to H and W seeking payment for the balance of 266,146 pesos. As H and W did not respond, thus X Investment Corporation filed this case for the collection of 266,146 pesos. In their answer, H and W claimed that they had fully paid their obligation to X Investment Corporation. They contended that sometime after receiving X Investment Corporation letter of July 25, 1986, concerning the conditional offer to reduce the penalty charges, H and W met with the president of X Investment Corporation, during which the latter agreed to waive the penalties and reserve service charges, provided H and W paid the principal and interest computed as of July 31, 1986, less the earlier payment of 500,000. This is the reason why, according to them, they only paid 410,854.49 pesos. H&W added that this fact of full payment is reflected in the voucher accompanying the check they issued, which bore the notation full payment alone. Was there condemnation? So, in Article 100, in Article 1 to 70, Paragraph 2 of Civil Code provides that express condemnation must comply with the forms of the nation. In Article 748, Paragraph 3 provides that the nation and acceptance of a movable, the value of which exceeds 500,000, must be made in writing, otherwise the same shall be void. In this connection, under Article 417, Paragraph 1, obligation actually referring to credits are considered movable property. In this case at bar, it is disputed that the alleged agreement to condone 266,196 pesos on the second loan was not reduced in writing.
So, Article 1271, the delivery of a private document evidencing a credit made voluntarily by the creditor to the debtor implies the renunciation of the action which the former had against the latter. If in order to nullify this waiver, it should be claimed to be inefficacious, the debtor and his heirs may uphold it by providing that the delivery of the document was made in virtue of payment of the debt. So, for example, I have my friend, and she owe me a money amount of 300,000 pesos, and evidencing by a promissory note. So, we have evidence nga magpatinuod nga ni huwam si Jao kwarta. So, but her promissory note was not notarized by her. So that promissory note is private document. The promissory note is a private document. So, but even though her promissory note was not notarized, I still delivered it to her. I still delivered her promissory note to her. So that means that even though without her notarization, I still accept it. O gihapon gidawat. So that means that that presumption is I condoned her obligation. Yes, that's the Article 1 to 7 example. So let's go to Article 1 to 7. Whenever the private document in which the debt appears is found in the possession of the debtor, it shall be presumed that the creditor delivered it voluntarily unless the contrary is proved. So the same as the example sa Article 1271. My friend owed me a money amount of 300,000 pesos evidenced by a promissory note which was not notarized, and that promissory note is a private document, but subsequently the promissory note is found in the possession of my friend. So this presumption is that I delivered it voluntarily as to condone the obligation. So lahi na siya sa Article 1271, which is I condone the obligation of X, but and the article 1271 is I voluntarily delivered it to condone the obligation. So that's the example of Article 1272. Let's proceed to Article 1273. Article 1273. The renunciation of the principal debt shall extinguish the accessory obligation, but the waiver of the latter shall leave the former in force. So, for the example, niloan ko og kwarta, amount of 100,000 pesos. So, as to secure my obligation, I pledge or guarantee, um, for example, naamoy kanang motor or unsa na inyong igarantiya nga mulon mo, for example cellphone, motore, unsa pa na dira para laman malunan ingana ba na no og mulon kay mo garantiya ka para laman malunan gyud ka labi na og dako imong ilon kay nay uban nga dili magpalon kay basin og dili ka bayad. So mong maningkamot jud og garantiya no kay para makabayad. So let's proceed. So I guarantee, for example, I have a motorcycle, so I guarantee my motorcycle. Oh, and by the way, katong akong gilon nga kwarta is mahuman si Jaini ka December 31, 2020. So, ang guarantee akong motor. I have a motorcycle, so I guarantee it to secure my obligation. So, akong gigarantay ang motor, then akong gi-deliver on by July 1, 2020. So, ako na si Zanggi garantay ato sa akong gilunan kato pag inigad akong gi-deliver by July 1, 2020. So, on October 1, 2020, kanang nabalik na naho ang ahong gi-pledge or ahong gi-guarantee. So, that means that the presumption of the accessories that pledge of the obligation is remitted. So, that means is ang ahong gi-pledge is na-remit na. Then, nabalik na naho kay na human naman siya. So, that's the example of Article 1273. So, let's proceed to Article 1274. It is presumed that the accessory obligation of pledge has been remitted when the thing pledged after its delivery to the creditor is found in the possession of the debtor or of a third person who owns the thing. So, ingana na sila. Kanang para nga to, 'di ba? Ako na si Jang na balik by October 1, 2020. So, it means that the thing that I pledge is remitted. And then after it's delivered to the creditor, found to the debtor, that means that pagkahuman sa pag-deliver naho sa ahong gi-pledge or guarantee, which is the motorcycle, na balik na ho. That is the meaning of after the delivery of the creditor found that a possession of the debtor or of a third person who owns the thing. Example that kumaker imong kumaker da kanang kumaker nimo, di ba? Og kumaker ka kay nay uban nga kanang imong gi-pledge is ija na. So, ang katong ija mabalik pud ni ja katong ijang gi-pledge. So, that's the example of Article 1274. And let's go to the next topic, which is the correlated articles of Article 1274. Article 2085. The following requisites are essential to the contract of pledge of mortgage, that they be constituted to the secure the fulfillment of a principal obligation. So they secure first the fulfillment of the obligor, sa ilang obligation. Ilang gi-secure ang kanang obligation sa obligor to have a fulfillment. That next is that the plague core or mortgagor be the absolute owner of the thing, pledge, or mortgage. That the persons constituting the pledge or mortgage have the free disposal of their property, and in the absence of thereof, that they have legally authorized for the purposes. So, third persons who are not parties of the principal obligation may secure the latter by pledging or mortgaging their own property. So, so in Article 2093, in addition to requisites prescribed in Article 2085, it is necessary in order to constitute the contract of pledge that the thing pledged be placed in possession of the creditor of or of a third person by common agreement. So that's all. So that Article 209 is it is essential resides that in contract of pledge the object of which is to be delivered to the possession of the creditor or a third person common agreement. Consequently, it is presumed that the accessory obligation of pledge has been condoned. When the thing pledged after delivery to the creditor is found in the possession of the debtor, which is the debtor is me and the creditor katong akong example nga atong article 1271. Yes, I am the creditor and the debtor is my friend or the third person who owns the thing, so katong imong co-maker. So all um that's all for today. Thank you and God bless.